Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining this NCAA Rules webinar. Glad you can join us. With us here is Steve Siomis, Roger Morton, and Ncaa. And my name is Paul Tamburino. Just a little bit overview of what we are, this elite college soccer referees. We started this organization about 7-8 years ago, and basically it was to dedicate solely to collegiate soccer. And at this present time, we have over 20 Division I conferences, 4 Division III, 2 Division II, and NAIA schools. So we're dedicated to collegiate soccer. We're in constant contact with our referees through webinars, videos, weekly updates, weekly views, videos, so they can prepare going into the next collegiate game. So without further ado, we'll get into it. We added something to the agenda that we're going to talk about, and that's the games that are playing indoor. So I know some games are, and the different rules that we have. So Jen, I'll turn that over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us and taking a little time out of your evening. There's been some issues with clarifications on the indoor rules for those games being played indoors. Some of you may have read the NCAA rule, but there are some clarifications. I'm going to have Roger. Roger has been in touch with Rich Grady and Ken Andres, who are the rules interpreters. And so he's got an update for us as far as where we stand with some of those.
Thanks, Chen. Good evening, everyone. One thing we want to point out with the upcoming memo in the upcoming days from the Ncaa in reference to indoor games. One of the biggest questions that we have been posed from coaches and referees is what happens when the ball touches the superstructure. At this time, the Ncaa is coming out with the clarification, and the clarification is that once the ball hits the superstructure, the game stops immediately. At that time, the referee would give a drop ball to the team who did not last touch the ball. So once again, once the ball hits the superstructure, the game is stopped immediately. Therefore, at that time, the referee will give a drop ball to the team who last touched the ball prior to hitting the superstructure. Keyword, prior to hitting the superstructure. But in the upcoming days, we look for a memo coming from the Ncaa with more clarification. Any questions, just please drop us a note in the meantime. Paul, if we will go right ahead into our presentation.
Can't hear you.
Paul, actually, you're still muted.
We have a chat room. If you have questions, you can type your question in and we'll try to answer them as we go along. So, okay, go ahead, Doug.
Excellent. So we're going to start here. We're going to start with the violent behavior updates to the NCAA rules. This is one of the biggest updates they've made. And through feedback from the entire community, referee community, playing community, coaching community, the NCAA really was looking to distinguish between the types of violent behavior. In other words, last year, for example, we had an issue where anything that would have been a hair pull, anything similar to that would have been categorized as fighting. In other words, the fighting rule pretty much could encompass anything that we gave a red card for in terms of its interpretation. So the NCAA wanted to kind of bring out a distinguishment between the types of violent behavior and fighting, right? To put more clarification on that. So they were trying to just essentially redefine it so that it was much more clear and there's not as much ambiguity between them. All right, so go ahead, Doug. We're gonna go through these fairly quickly. You can see here, violent behavior can be against anyone. For example, teammate, official, spectator, not competing for the ball, may be on or off the field, and the ball may or may not be out of play. All right. Violent behavior 1, however, this is how we're defining this. The NCAA is defining this, is an unwarranted excessive act or use of force when not challenging for the ball. And the result of the punishment is an immediate ejection and 1-game suspension, right? And you've probably had this complaint over the years, as us referees have too. Not all red cards are necessarily the same. They may be red cards, but in terms of probably what's really important to you all as coaches is the difference between suspension. How do we punish the differences between those when it's not a fighting incident? So we'll go to violent behavior 2 then is what we've added, which is an unwarranted excessive act or use of force, which is malicious and so extreme and severe that it places participant in danger of physical injury. These may include headbutting, elbows, stomping, kicking. You're going to see in some of the videos when you talk about headbutting, for example, we're going to show you in incidents of where a headbutt might be a violent behavior 2 and incidents where it might be a violent behavior 1, right? Depending upon that maliciousness and extreme and severe component there. So a violent behavior 2 is punishable by an ejection and a 2-game suspension. A 2-game suspension. Now, before any of you are concerned about what we talk to the referees about, in our webinars with the referees, we have instructed referees that the punishment with respect to game suspension amount or anything else should never enter into a referee's mind when making a decision. So I just want to make sure that you all as coaches understand that we are instructing our referees to not even consider what the ultimate punishment is outside of whether it fits 1, 2, or fighting. Okay, so I wanted to reassure you all of that, that's what we're instructing. So let's go forward there, Doug. So fighting, obviously defined as deliberate strike or punch. This is a clarification, or attempt to strike or punch another player. So the requirement of making contact is not necessarily the end-all be-all. Official coach bench personnel in a malicious manner. And again, as it always has been, fighting is an immediate ejection and a 2-game suspension. All right. So here's the communication process you should get from the referees. When they identify an incident, right, the referee shall inform you all, the head coach, right, the official scorekeeper, and the player of whether it's a violent 1, a violent 2, or a fighting. So in the past, it was we had to notify you if it was a fighting incident. That was because if it was a red card for fighting, we told you that. And if it wasn't, it was violent behavior, essentially, or could have been serious foul play. But nonetheless, the suspension wasn't any different. So fighting was the category that we wanted to let you know. Now we're going to have to let you know, our referees will let you know whether it's a violent 1, a violent 2, or a fighting incident. All right. And they will also let the official scorekeeper know as well. Right. Now, to the extent that your conference allows video review, we've instructed the referees, you know, if it is not, if you are not completely 100% sure of 1, 2, or fighting, to use the technology where the technology is available. So that we are instructing referees to make sure they are using technology. All right, so just some of the considerations, you can read them here, right? Disregard, puts an opponent in complete danger of physical injury. And that word malice is, I think, really malice, brutality, right? Those are things that, those words are really important. And I think it's hard to define those things. It's one of those things where you feel like you know it when you see it type of thing with malice and brutality. So go ahead, Doug. All right, so we're going to look at some here. And these are all clips that the NCAA has put together. So as we go through these clips, we'll take a look at them, and then we'll tell you what the NCAA interpretation is. Some of them you'll see that there could be possibly different interpretations, but that'll make some more sense as we get into this here. So let's look at the first one here, Doug. So here you can see clearly that there are physical punch both thrown and landed. So Doug, if you want to just go ahead and go to the ruling, you're going to see this one is clearly, we're trying to start with the obvious first. This one is clearly going to be a fighting incident with those two players. So not much controversy there. Both players swing, both players strike. You could if you have video, you can go to the analyzation of the video and see if anybody else should be punished. But the gist of this clip that we're trying to show you is what would constitute fighting here. Go ahead, Doug. Great. And here's another instance where we try to, this is probably as obvious as we can make it for you, but you clearly have punches thrown and connecting. And you could make a case for the third person coming in, maybe punishing with some other yellow card or something of that nature. But the main thing we're trying to get across here is these are clear examples of fighting incidents here. Go ahead, Doug. Let's go to the next one. Now, let me go back real quick because I see something popped up about coaches coming onto the field. So this is really clear. Go back real quick, Doug, to the previous one because I did not mention this, and that's a good point that somebody brought up. So coaches, you're going to notice here at the end a coach come onto the field, but I want you to notice their behavior and what they're attempting to do. So coaches are allowed to come on the field in a fight as long as they are acting as peacekeepers, essentially, right? Peacemakers in the fight. So you're going to see that here. So here's a coach going clearly to players to try and calm the situation and create more calm to the situation, not volatile. So you can come onto the field as a coach during a fight if it is to essentially play peacemaker. If not, we have other issues. Okay, so that's a good point. I appreciate whoever that was that asked that question. That's a very good point. This one's a little tricky, so watch very closely. Boom. Run that through real quick again, Doug. Okay, so here we have a situation off the ball, and we don't just get a swing of the arm or something of that nature. We get an elbow, we get a cock, and we get a throw to the head or neck in area, right? So in the past, this was off the ball. You could have considered it fighting or violent behavior. Now what we're telling you is this is clearly a violent behavior. And this would be categorized as violent behavior too. This is malicious. It's off the ball. It is brutal. It's intended to hurt specifically. And so this would be an example of violent behavior too. All right, so I know that a lot of people feel as though goalkeepers get the benefit of the doubt, and maybe sometimes they do psychologically. This is going to be violent behavior too, right? At no point does the goalkeeper have any intention here. As a matter of fact, takes his eye off the ball and an opportunity to collect the ball solely to go straight to the head and neck area of the player at force. So again, this is an instance where, right, that's malicious, brutal, and it is clearly intended to hurt or bring injury or something of that nature. So violent behavior too in this case. Go ahead, Doug. Okay. Now this one's a little bit different, right? In the sense it's off the ball, it's late. But this is one of those fouls, and this is one of those red cards that's meant to more intimidate, right? And maybe take a shot at. It's into the back. Yes, it could be dangerous, but it's not to head or neck. It's not brutal, as they would say. So this is an instance where we would say the NCAA would say this is a violent behavior 1. Right? So charges in the back, it's unwarranted, it's excessive, it's off the ball. All of that makes it a red card. But clearly the player has a level of brutality here, not a level of brutality here like we've seen in the previous clips so far. Okay? Right, this is a really, really good one. Okay, so here is an egregious one again. You think about what happens here, right? We have a goalkeeper who collects the ball and clearly steps out of their way, right? Out of their normal course of direction to come out of their way with a shoulder in the back, which is clearly meant to injure, right? So this is different, right? Very much different. Clearly going out of her way here. Right? That's purposely meant to hurt, right? So Doug, go ahead and bring that up. Okay, deliberately runs. So this is going to be a red card, right? It's a non-soccer play. But again, not to the head or neck, and it doesn't have that maliciousness to it, right? It has that shot aspect to it, if you will. So let's go to the next one. Boom. Okay. So this is a stomp, right? Clear stomp, right? Completely intended. Looks down at the player before he does it, frustrated that he gets fouled. And this clearly is deliberate and brutal, right? Meant to injure. This is very malicious. So look down, stomp right on the chest area, right? This is very, very malicious. And this is where the NCAA is considered a violent behavior 2 incident. Now we're going to have somebody step on somebody a little bit later, and we're going to talk about the differences between this one and the one we see later. Actually, later being right now. Okay, now here's one in which these are both violent behavior, right? But in the first one, the player actually stops, looks, and maliciously intends to stomp. In this instance, the difference here, the interpretation from the NCAA, the difference here is there is a tackle being made. The player goes in the air to avoid the tackle. And what we're saying here is he just doesn't avoid him on the way down intentionally. He figures, I got to land somewhere. I could avoid him, but I don't avoid him. And I purposely don't avoid him. But his intent when he goes in the air is not to stomp on the player or anything of that nature. So this is still punishable by a red card, but now we have violent 1, right? Now, depending on the situation, the NCAA would still be comfortable and would support a violent 2 if that was the interpretation, if the referee truly interpreted that as being malicious. But on its face, as we see it here, that's what we would say, just looking at the video, we would say it's violent 1. There may be other factors in the match that would cause the referee to infer that this was done with more malicious intent or something of that nature. And so it definitely could be supported with a violent behavior 2, but just based on what we're looking at here, we would say violent behavior 1. So this one you've all seen many times over. I think the whole soccer community around the world has probably seen this many times over. But this is something that would have been categorized as fighting in the past, right? Because a hair pull would have been categorized that way. And now with the option for violent behavior 2, right? It doesn't go into the fighting category. Now it goes into violent behavior 2, but still carries that 2-game suspension that fighting would have, right? And this, again, we're going to see another clip here where I will tell you, it may not sound this way, but all hair pulls are not created equally, so to speak. And you'll see what I mean by that when we look at another clip. So here we go. So remember that previous hair pull? And we get this one now. So a hair pull, it's still going to be a red card, right? It's still violent behavior. The difference is this player actually is reaching out, grabs the player's hair, realizes they grab it, let's go right away. So that takes away what we would say would be the maliciousness of this in comparison to the previous one. So grabs it, trying to get to her, okay, let's go right away. Doesn't yank the player down, doesn't yank her neck this way, that way, or the other. Still punishable by a red card, but now violent behavior 1 versus violent behavior 2. This one's hard to see if you're not watching the right area. So Doug, if you'd go back for me and start this clip over, just start it at full speed. So right over here, and then they'll slow it down on the replay. So you'll see it, watch this player, they'll come together and bang, okay? So this player clearly, this is what we would consider a malicious headbutt, right? Winds up all the way through. I mean, that's probably what they're going to do when they head a ball, let alone headbutt another player. So this is definitely malicious. This is a very brutal headbutt. This player probably, I don't draw any conclusions. It wasn't my game. I wouldn't have been surprised if I would have seen a concussion for this player. So this is definitely a violent behavior too. Okay, so speaking of headbutts again, just like hair pulls are not all created equal, neither are headbutts, right? There are different levels of these things. And so that's what we're trying to distinguish in a couple of these videos so that you kind of understand the severity, right? Or the maliciousness. So this is a headbutt, yes? Or could be considered a headbutt. But it is completely different from the one that we just previously saw. So let's take a look, Doug. Okay. So this is going to be violent behavior 1, right? Doesn't come from back here, doesn't follow through, kind of comes up, touches heads, and then kind of goes forward a little bit. So not the brutality, not the maliciousness that we saw in the one previous to this. Boom. Right, so what do we have here? We've got a strike, right? Straight to the neck or face area. Hey, Doug. Great. So this one technically could be written up either way. The suspension obviously is the same, but you could call this fighting or you could call this violent behavior too, right? If you deem that arm was a strike to the face, you could call it a fighting incident. Either way, it has to be at least a violent behavior too, or could be fighting as well.
That was a question on that.
There was a question?
Yeah.
Who's reading the questions?
Paul.
Yep. Shanna says the first headbutt you mentioned violent behavior 2. When would you consider headbutting as fighting?
Yeah, typically now with the violent behavior 2, you don't need to consider headbutt as fighting, right? If you go back to the fighting incident, it's striking or attempt to strike, right? So that's the whole point of this violent behavior 2, is to distinguish between truly what is fighting and what is what is violent behavior, right? In the past, we had to put the fighting rule was written so broadly, right, that it could encompass anything within the violent behavior spectrum. So now we're trying to avoid that. Hopefully that answers that question. Okay. If you're looking closely, you would have seen it. It was really tricky. See if we can look at it one more time. What you see is a player getting kind of bumped from the back and getting frustrated and takes a little shot right in the stomach of the defender that's marking her. So Doug, go ahead. So this is going to be a violent behavior 1, right? Down low, it's a little shot to the midsection. Not that that doesn't hurt, but in other words, the difference between violent behavior 1 and violent behavior 2, this is going to be violent behavior 1. And this is where, as administrators and assigners, we do not answer the phone afterwards because we know we're getting phone calls. At any rate, we have to identify who's involved. This is clearly a fighting incident. So where there's technologies, the referee will go and utilize technology to help identify all those that need to be punished or that are part of it. But this will be a fighting incident, clearly. Okay, here too, we've got fighting, right? And so this, again, if we have technology available, the referee crew should be going to review technology to try to identify the culprits and deal with the punishment accordingly. Okay, this is very, very hard to see, but hopefully it comes out. Watch right around midfield as they're running. And boom. If you look at this, the ball's nowhere in the vicinity. The player stops her defensive run to change direction to hit somebody with the shoulder and the head or neck injury, right? Now, this happened to be a coach that I work with in the Big Ten. And I believe, if I'm not correct or mistaken, I believe this player missed either 4 or 6 games as a result of the concussion that came from this hit. So this is the type of stuff that does not belong in our game ever whatsoever. And so this is clearly violent behavior too. Okay, so now this is one of those that, depending upon the kind of what the referee is looking at and what they deem the severity, maybe what's going on in the match, this is a hair pull that kind of is in between the two that we've already seen, right? It's clearly yanked in order to pull a little bit, get position, and get that player out of the way. So what we would say is you could clearly make a case for violent behavior too. But violent behavior 1 would be supported as well, depending upon the referee's interpretation of maybe the atmosphere of the game and his read on the intent of what that was intended to do. Okay, great. This is clearly a red card, right? But again, an instance where not all red cards are created equal. And if you go back to that original headbutt that we saw, right? Where it was clearly launching into a player to create injury. This is another one where I'm kind of into you and trying to intimidate you, right? And so this is still a red card, but this is going to be a violent behavior 1. Okay, so we got a ball out of play, a referee's worst nightmare, and we have something off the ball. And you're going to see an angle here shortly. Hopefully that shows it a little bit better. Let's see if they show it on. There we go. All right. Boom. So you can't see it extremely well, but what's happening here is the player, as they're backing up, gets that arm up right into the face, head and neck area intentionally into the player. So go ahead, Doug. So because of that kind of elbow up to the face, off the ball, intentionally, right? This one we considered violent behavior 2. That was a tricky one to see. You couldn't see a really good clip of it, but that was a violent behavior 2. Okay, this one is really important to watch the player. Doug, if you'd replay that again, I want you, as players, the ball goes up. I want to watch the player in dark blue, and watch their eyes and what they do after the ball's gone from them. Boom. Okay, so there's an elbow to the face at full speed, right? So this is really, really malicious. So this, go ahead, Doug. Okay. So either one could be supported here, depending upon, as far as the NCAA is concerned, depending upon the referee's interpretation of what's going on in the match. Again, some of this has to do, we're watching still clips with one incident. There is no context, right? There's no context around any of these fouls. So we're trying to give you an idea of what we would consider violent behavior 1, 2, and then fighting based upon no context. So this is a clip where I'd say, depending upon the context perhaps of the match, this could be 1 or 2. Watch carefully. There it is. So watch one on the ground. The ball's gone. Could easily get up, and boom. Go ahead, Doug. Yeah. So it could easily get up. There's no reason for this whatsoever in the game other than to actually harm somebody, right? That's it. That's the only reason. Wasn't being held, none of that. So this is definitely violent behavior 2. Go ahead, Doug. So this is another one. Depending upon what the referee sees and how they see it, if they have technology, they'll go take a look at it. But the NCAA would be okay with violent 1 or violent 2 here. So believe it or not, the arm's not quite up into the neck area. It's more in the upper chest area. And so I think that's why they kind of interpret it. Can't really tell from this video. Really tricky. So watch these two on your bottom right. All right. So this is, hey, get out of my way, get out of my way. You're holding me, get out of my way. Doug, go ahead. Right. So this one is not anything malicious. This is somebody getting somebody off them. There's no strike. This is a push. It's to the chest. So in this instance, what we're trying to show you is coming all the way down from fighting and violent behavior 2, all the way down to the differences between that. And now we're talking about a caution here. Bear with me here. Okay, so that's violent behavior 1, violent behavior 2, and fighting. So what we're going to do next is Paul is going to go over some of the other rule changes with respect to free kicks, goal kicks, and all of those new changes.
Thanks, Chen. Before we go into that, I'd like to have Roger talk about the, excuse me, sorry. I'd like to have Roger talk, because Roger's on the regional assigner for the NCAA, and I want him to just touch base on protests. So, Roger?
Yes, thanks, Paul. One of the major new changes this year for the NCAA is Rule 5.81. A post-game protest is limited to only situations involving 1, player identification, or 2, illegal participation by an ejected or suspended player. This is a major rule change for us. In the past, we could protest situation. Is it a red card? Should the red card be rescinded? The NCAA has narrowed it down only to, once again, 2 situations. In one, once again, I reiterate, player identification. So, for example, let's say player A is issued a red card, but video review or post game, we reviewed that it was actually number 17. In that case, yes, a protest would be filed. Or 2, illegal participation of ejected or suspended player. Pretty much self-explanatory. That is a major rule change for us in reference to protests. Paul?
Thanks, Roger. I appreciate it. It's, there's need to be some clarity there, and I know the coaches, try to get that. They want to get their student athletes back in if they feel it's unjust. So now we know it's in black and white what we can do, what we can't do. So this next segment, we're not going to go through every single slide, because it's a lot of slides when it comes to the goal kick. I know some schools have already started playing. Some don't start until another couple of weeks. But we've been seeing this. The goal kick situation. We've seen this being played in Europe and around the world, for the last year or so. So it's really nothing new, but we do want to cover a little bit of it. And I'll just give you the highlights of what we have here. You can see that anybody can play the ball to a teammate or play the ball from anywhere in the goal area. So this is nothing new. It doesn't matter where the players are in the penalty area. It doesn't matter where the ball is in the goal area. It doesn't matter. So, but the key here is that the goalkeeper cannot use his or her hands. This is really important. So let's go ahead, Doug. It can go in any direction. It can go outside. It does not have to go outside. But again, the goalkeeper cannot use his hands, and we'll get into some situations where there's some trickery involved trying to circumvent. So go ahead, Doug. So in this case, you saw that where the defender took the goal kick. It doesn't have to be the goalkeeper. So anybody can take that kick. Anywhere in the goal area. So that time the goalkeeper took it by near the goal line. So this one is an indirect free kick. He played it to his teammate kicked it back to him. He used the goalkeeper, used his hands. It's the infraction. The ball is played where it is parallel to where the touch is on the 6-yard line. So it's not where the goalkeeper touches the ball. So, and it's an indirect free kick. But so this is the one of the circumventing the laws. The goalkeeper kicks it to the player to his right. He kicks it to the player in the middle of the penalty area. He flicks it up to the goalkeeper. Cannot do that. No, cannot use the hands until it's touched by an opponent. This is also illegal. It's got to be touched by an opponent. So we saw this very early on when FIFA changed the rules. We saw this very early on in the Spanish league where they tried to circumvent the rule. So the other thing that comes into it is the wall situations. And I mean, I know you as individual coaches, you have your own tactics of what to do and how you do it. This gives you some illustrations of what is allowed, what is not allowed, and obviously the actions that the referee will take. So the attackers must be 1 yard, 1 meter from the wall when there's 3 or more on the wall. So here it is. It's correctly done, 1 meter away. This is where the referee will intervene. If there's a player not within 1 meter, the referee will intervene, hold play, and ask that player to move 1 meter away. You have to wait for the second whistle.
We have a question as well.
Okay. Let me finish this one first. So the attacking player insisting that he wants to be close to the wall. He moves in again the third time. The referee has the option to caution here. It's not necessarily needs to be a caution, but he has the option to caution. So, and this, just remember that is a situation then that, the referee has that option. What's the ruling on defenders on goal kicks? Can they enter the box when the ball? Defenders on goal kicks. I'm confused with the question. Jen?
The opposition.
Opposition, Paul. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll get into that when the attackers can come into the penalty area. And then if we didn't answer your question, we'll get back to it. So again, it doesn't matter where the attacker has to be. He has to be 1 meter away, 1 yard away from the wall. So front, back, whatever the situation is, has to be 1 meter away. Good. Here you have 2 players. Both have to be 1 meter away from the wall. Here they're too close. The referee's going to intervene and move the players up. Then we have to be careful that the wall doesn't move up. And again, the referee has the option to caution some defender, any one of the defenders that he sees is interfering with his instructions. We may see this year. So right now he's legal, and then he moves in. So once he moves in before the kick, it's not allowed. He has to remain there.
Hey, Paul,
Yep.
if the referee does not intervene, does that mean that he or she agrees the attacking players are following the 1 yard rule?
If they don't intervene, I'm sorry?
Yeah, is the assumption then, does that mean that he or she agrees that the attacking players are following the 1 yard rule?
No, the referee has to intervene. The referee has to intervene if they're not following the rule, but it's before the kick. That's the thing. So, okay, here's where the attackers are now. So the attackers have to be outside the penalty area, and they can't enter the penalty area until the ball is kicked. So there they circumvented the law. The goalkeeper uses his hands. So they have to remain outside the penalty area until the goal kick has been taken. See, now they can enter, the ball's been played.
Here's another question, Paul. If a player moves inside 1 yard of the wall as the kick is being taken, does it result in a retake or an indirect free kick to the defending team?
Indirect free kick to the defending team because they did a violation. So that's and you saw that in the referee where he's given the indirect free kick signal. Good questions though. In this case here, let's play this video, Doug. The attacker is not out of the penalty area, but he interferes with the play here. Once he interferes with the play, the kick has to be retaken. And we'll see another version of this later. Put the graphic back up there, Doug. That the referee can use judgment as to whether the attacker gets involved. So if the ball is played to the goalkeeper's right, and this attacker is where he is now, the referee can let the play continue because he doesn't interfere with the play at all. It's only when he interferes with the play. So this referee felt it was okay to blow the whistle back because he did interfere. In his opinion, he interfered. So there's a quick scenario of the wall, and you've seen players laying down behind the wall, to get that extra, so the players can jump and defend. That's totally legal. It doesn't. Somebody says, well, it's dangerous play. No, that's not dangerous play. That's totally legal if you decide to put a player laying down behind the wall to defend. That's entirely your choice to do that. But we've seen this, play out a number of times. But one thing we did want to mention that came up in our last call with the referees, and it can possibly happen. I haven't seen it happen yet, but it was a very, very good question. What happens if the goalkeeper or the defender on the taking of a goal kick misplays the ball? He touches it, misplays it, slips, falls. The attacker comes in, gathers the ball, and then is fouled. It's just like during dynamic play. Then the referee has to make a decision. Is it a yellow card because he played the goalkeeper had a play on the ball, or is it dog so? So these are the things that come up when you're talking about rule changes and everything else that can happen. Anything weird can happen. So, and that's only if the goalkeeper plays, but if there's holding or anything else, then it's a red card. So some of these things that can happen in the game, I haven't seen them yet, but anything can happen in soccer. So just to let you know, that's one of the things that can happen, one of the weird scenarios. Do we have any questions further? We've, finished this, pretty good time, with the referees. We had 2 sessions with the referees, 800 people each time, and we had a lot of questions. So, we took the full hour and a half. So, Jen, you have anything to add? Steve, Roger?
No,
Anyway, Roger, can you explain? Excuse me, Roger, can you explain the indoor rule, because we did not really go through it? Exactly what happened? What's the restart if the ball hit the superstructure?
If the ball hits the superstructure,
Yes.
the play is automatically dead,
Yes.
and that will be a drop ball for the opposite team who struck the ball. Okay.
For who? For the team that struck the ball.
Correct. It'll be a drop ball to the opposing team.
Chin?
yes. What? Say your question again, Steve.
Superstructure. What are we talking about? We've been going back and forth on this thing with the NCAA.
Right.
And what was the final decision? On the restarts on the superstructure. Guys, what's going to happen? They need to know now.
My understanding is the team that hits the structure gets the ball back.
Yes.
I mean, a drop ball.
Yes, the drop ball. That is correct.
The team that hits the ball gets the ball back on the drop ball. All right? If the ball, if the superstructure hit the ball in the penalty area and falls down the penalty area, who gets the restart?
That's one of the questions from the coaches. That's one of the questions from the coaches.
So we drop the ball to the goalkeeper, right?
It's where it hits.
Correct.
Where it hit in the penalty area. And if the
Correct.
ball hits and goes out of bounds, that's the only time we give it to the other team as a throw-in. Correct?
Because yes, that's my understanding as well.
Okay.
And this is why,
Coaches.
yeah, and this is why coaches just bear with us. This is obviously the NCAA is going to put something out. This is why we're looking at it and saying, well, okay, yeah, it's a drop ball, but they're going to come out with a clarification because they really haven't thought this through yet either. So, but
We've got an indoor game tomorrow, so you know what I mean. It can happen tomorrow.
I understand. Well, that's the NCAA is, but we will get that posted to you. We'll get it to you. You can go on our website. Our website is elitecollegesoccerreferees.com, or we'll send it out individually to all the coaches.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, this indoor thing is something new for everybody here. So,
additionally, let me just add there are 2 additional rule changes that came in place. One is dealing with electronic devices for coaches. Members of the official coaching staff who are eligible to participate are permitted to communicate with each other via electronic devices, whether on site or at another location. Once again, members of the official coaching staff who are eligible to participate are permitted to communicate with each other via electronic devices, whether on site or at another location. That's another major rule change. And
Roger,
second, yes.
Roger, let me ask you this: and I remember something vaguely from last year, is that they had to be on the roster.
Correct. And I'm going to interpret that Paul, when it says eligible to participate, that means you must be on the roster because you're an eligible coaching on the coaching roster. That is absolutely correct. And that's how I would interpret that also.
Let's make that clear.
Right. And then finally, secondly, they added with video review. Timing issues now can be corrected with video review. So if there's a timing issue, the referees can go to video review to correct timing issues.
Okay. Look, let's go back to the chat because we had a couple questions.
Yes. One of them is what happens if the ball hit the referee?
The player that kicked the ball at the referee gets the ball back. That's the same thing.
by
with
drop
FIFA.
ball.
It's the same thing with FIFA does, yeah.
Drop ball.
Paul, there's a question going back to the new goal kick rules and all that kind of stuff. From a goal kick, goalkeeper kicks the ball directly into her own goal. Goal kick, corner kick. Or sorry, goal or corner kick.
Corner kick, I
Yep.
believe. Yeah, corner kick.
Yep.
Right
Yes,
there,
score
yeah.
a goal on that ball session.
Player moves aside 1 yard of the wall and the kick is okay. Can you clarify, is it the team that kicked? Okay, I think we did that, Brian. Anything else?
There's another one here.
Any other questions coming in from the coaches?
That's the
Again-
question right there. If the ball hits the superstructure, is the team that goes against the ball.
Yeah,
Right now, we would tell you that the goalkeeper, we drop the ball to the goalkeeper. As soon as we get that clarification, we will get it out via the conferences. Yep, and on our ECSR website. Paul, we can put this up on the ECSR website and everything, correct?
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we can send it to the coaches as well.
Yeah.
And-
So
and
we'll
the other
send it
thing-
and we'll post it.
Yeah, and the other thing, coaches, I mean, you know, you're gonna jump off this call, you're gonna talk to your staff, and then there's gonna be questions amongst yourselves that you're gonna have, you know, so you could always feel free to pick up the phone and call us if we're obviously one of your signers. Be more than happy to answer the question, or if we don't get it, we'll go to Rich Grady and Ken Anders and get it for you. That's for sure. So, you know, we appreciate you, you know, participating tonight. Doug Ferguson, we got another question come in. Doug Ferguson and his wife, they will put this on a YouTube video as soon as they put that up. We will send that link to you, just in case you know you want to share it with some other coaches in your conference, or someone couldn't make it. You could send it to them so they can attend and watch it as it goes. You have another chat?
Another question.
Paul, another question. Oh,
Yeah, I see it. It said, are we required to kick it to the other team off the drop ball? No,
No.
you're not. So, but no, again, another good question.
Yep.
But this is different times, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, this is as crazy as you are going on with your schedules and everything. We're going just as crazy with time changes, day changes, cancellations, the virus. So, please be patient with us. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. But there's a lot of changes that are going on, and it's still a fluid situation of what we're dealing with. So, another question.
Can I take yes?
Yes.
Yes, they can. Also, may I say something as far as the signing? Gentlemen, ladies, that's going to happen due to COVID. When you're switching games from Sunday to Monday morning at 9 o'clock, that's impossible for me to get a referee that qualifies for the game. So if you're going to see someone back to back, that doesn't mean that's what I want to do. But that's going to happen. That happens already this weekend. Our heads are tied. People are working. They're not available at 9 o'clock in the morning on Monday to referee the game. So you gotta be patient with us in the spring. You're gonna see the same referee maybe more than twice. You won't want to do it that way, but it is what it is. Tuesday, Wednesday, 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock games, 2 o'clock in the afternoon games. In the last minute, moving from outdoors to indoors. That's very hard to find the quality referee that we're looking for. So we'll try our best. Hang in there with us, please.
Anything else, guys, for the good of the game? Again, I want to thank everybody for attending for this the Elite College Soccer Referees webinar. We'll get that YouTube video out to you as soon as we can. Again, if you ever need anything, just pick up the phone and we'll get it for you, no doubt about it. And the sooner we know of changes, the better it is for all of us. So good luck in your season right now. Please be safe, stay safe, student athletes. And again, we'll see you on the field. And thank you, Doug and Lana, for all you've done for us. Thank you and good night.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.